Number 4, a horrible discovery. 63 infants and fetuses found inside Perry Funeral Home. Tonight, we're tracking down the owner of Perry Funeral Home and asking how this happened. 7 Action News reporter Allie Hoxie is live right outside of the funeral home. And Allie, as I understand, you spoke with a mother who says her newborn was taken there.
That's right. She says she was depending on Perry Funeral Home to give a proper burial, but now she's not so sure that happened.
And I would like to have the closure just to know.
Taisha Duke says she gave birth to Julius in December of 2017, but lost him hours after birth. She says she turned his remains over to Perry Funeral Home to be buried and never got a death certificate. Once news hit of 11 fetuses being found inside the ceiling of Cantrell Funeral Home, she got worried. She called Perry Funeral Home on Thursday, the day before the police raid, to see if her baby was in fact buried.
So I had called just to see, like, well, if it's baby bodies at this funeral home, let me call and see, is my baby, buried or not?
She says the woman over the phone assured her that her baby was buried at Gethsemane on Gratiot Avenue in Detroit. Now that news is hit of 63 infants and fetuses found inside Perry Funeral Home, she's not so sure her baby is buried properly.
This funeral home is under investigation. How do I know my baby is not in there thrown to the side?
Police say they found 37 fetuses and infants inside 3 unrefrigerated cardboard boxes and another 27 from a freezer inside Perry Funeral Home Friday afternoon. According to the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs database and the Perry Funeral Home website, the owner of Perry Funeral Home is James Vermeulen. We went to speak with Vermeulen at his home in Plymouth, but no one was home, so we gave him a call.
We're reaching out just to get both sides of the story because police are saying that 63 infants were found inside the funeral home.
He told me over the phone that he would be not making any comment and that his lawyer would be reaching out to me. Vermeulen owns 2 other funeral homes in our area, Vermeulen-Sejewski Funeral Homes in both Plymouth and Westland. We contacted Laura today to see if these other funeral homes are under investigation. However, we have not heard back. We just received a statement from a lawyer representing Perry Funeral Homes and James Vermeulen. It says, in part, these allegations only involve remains from a hospital who had indicated the remains were unclaimed by the parents. It states, in the case of unclaimed remains, a funeral home cannot bury the remains without proper authorization, and the law in Michigan sets forth a hierarchy of authorization. Perry relied and operated within that hierarchy, but Perry never received the legal authorization necessary to conduct a final disposition of the remains. We will put the full statement on our website at WXYZ.com. Reporting live in Detroit, Allie Hoxie, 7 Action News.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. I wanted to cover the story out of Detroit because it's happening. It's popping up at more and more of these funeral parlors. I've talked about how a lot of these businesses are fronts for satanic demonic activity, which includes trafficking of children. They use industries and businesses like art as trafficking for children because they can write checks for ridiculous amounts of money and you can price anything the way you want. Okay, I talked about how daycare centers are used as another form of trafficking. You can go back to McMartin. A lot of the cases in the 80s and 90s revolved around daycare centers where Satanists were running these daycare centers and then putting them through ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control, the children, eventually getting caught and then, of course, getting freed or getting, off the hook, because that's how this whole system works. It protects these people at all costs, like the West Memphis 3, right on down the line. Well, another one is these funeral parlors. Now, the first thing somebody should think of when they hear that 63 fetuses were found at a Detroit funeral home, buried or, whatever, inside the funeral home, just say 63 fetuses, right? Why should be the question. The first reaction shouldn't be outrage and go, you should just say, well, why would they do it? Why would they keep 63 fetuses? Why would they be giving the ashes, supposedly supposed to give the ashes of these, these children, these babies to the mothers or the families who ask, for for the bodies to be buried, whatever they're asking for, right? Why would the funeral home keep it? Because it's clear why. Because all of these satanic rituals revolve around dead, deceased babies. Whether they're aborted, whether they die at birth, they use them. We know Planned Parenthood does this. You know why it's such a huge agenda, the feminist agenda, to push female rights when it has nothing to do with female rights? It has to do with them needing and wanting the baby, the aborted baby, for their rituals. Period. That's what it has to do with. So when a story like this comes out, it shouldn't be like, oh man, what deceitful practices. Because this is going on all around the country. Think about what goes on at funeral parlors, funeral homes, right? Nobody does. How easy it is. Those buildings are locked down. They're private. They're underground. I posted videos, people talking about how a lot of blood rituals happen at funeral parlors. Recently dead bodies, they go in, they drain the blood, and they use the blood of the deceased for their rituals. Authorities removed 63 fetuses from a Detroit funeral home, and regulators shuttered the business amid a widening investigation of alleged improprieties at local funeral homes. So it's multiple funeral homes in Detroit, but it's going on around the country. And stories like this can come out. They can come out. I know everyone thinks every single story that comes out is controlled, but when it's local, sometimes things slip and get through. These people are not perfect, okay? I know people like to think, well, and I'm one of those people that gets accused of that. I think that when you control the game, obviously they can control everything, but they slip up, they make mistakes, they have friction amongst themselves, just like regular people do in any household, right? So they make mistakes. The Detroit police chief said officers found 36 fetuses in boxes and 27 others in freezers during Friday's raid at the Perry Funeral Home. He said he was stunned by the discovery, which came a week after the remains of 10 fetuses and 1 infant were discovered in a ceiling at Detroit's defunct Cantrell Funeral Home. Those remains were found after state regulators received an anonymous letter. Michigan Licensing and Regulatory Affairs said the remains found at the Perry Funeral Home were turned over to state investigators who immediately declared the funeral home closed and its license suspended. Inspectors for the state of Michigan's Corporation Securities and Commercial Licensing said in a statement that they had found heinous conditions and negligent conduct, including numerous failures to certify death certificates and obtain proper permits for the burial. Okay? But we know why they're keeping these fetuses and what they're used for. And that should be the thing that people are saying, right? Because if somebody's just running a funeral home, right, what are you going to say? Oh, they're being cheap. Oh, they're being poor. Or they're acting like, oh, we can't afford to get the license or to do this or to do that. There's a reason that they're keeping these fetuses, that they're freezing them. There's a reason behind it. Just like in other videos I've reported where they found thousands of baby fetuses, in warehouses, stuffed, frozen, in storage facilities. Okay, there's reasons for it. They are used in these rituals, and these Satanists cannot get enough of them. The number of Satanists around the country, around the world, are growing at a rapid pace. Otherwise, what would somebody's excuse be for this? Oh, yeah, well, we just forgot. We forgot to bury them. We just had 63 bodies there. Oh, well, we couldn't afford to do it. Oh, okay, right. Right? It all connects. These businesses are all fronts for this type of activity. But you'll never hear those types of things connected to these stories. People will just scratch their head and go, they need to be shut down. That's a crime. They need to be thrown in jail. But they won't go, well, why would you do it? What is going on with the baby fetuses? All right? So add funeral parlors to the list of businesses that you should always be suspicious of. Right? Just like daycare centers. Always be suspicious of these places. Because these people run and control a lot of all of these industries. Let's be real. Then they want you to start up your own business, right? It's like, oh yeah, you should start up your own funeral business or this is business, right? Even if you're not on the inside. And those businesses always fail, right? Haven't you seen businesses you've gone somewhere and be like, how is this in business? Like, how are they even paying the rent here with the stuff that they're selling, let alone making a living? Because a lot of these businesses are fronts. That's what they are. That's how they write this stuff off. That's how they traffic. That's how they give themselves these social statuses that they need. And like I've said a million times, use philanthropy and all this other stuff to make it look like they're really just helping the world out when in reality they're not. And if people only knew what they were really doing, they'd throw up on themselves. So keep an eye out for funeral homes, stories like this. I feel like more probably will pop up. Maybe not. But the real question that should be asked is why? Why would they be doing it? Why would they be keeping all these fetuses? For what? Well, we know the answer to that. Too bad everyone else out there thinks we're crazy. but that's on them. I thank you for listening to today's show. God bless all of you and your families.